Hello and welcome to another edition of Agenda 2063 TV show, the only show in Ghana, the region and continent, telling you authentic stories about Africa's development. And even though we have spent the better part of some episodes telling you about the African Continental Free Trade Area, we always come back down to issues around Agenda 2063 and its development, because it's important, it's critical to the conversation about where Africa needs to be and where it needs to go. So my name is K Bensah Jr. I'm your regular host. Thank you once again for spending time with me. You're going to have a great show. We'll be right back. All right, so welcome back from the break. So as usual, we're going to have our two segments, the Africa Peer Review Mechanism Watch and then the year on East Africa. With APRM, we just want to go back to basics a bit. It's a new year, so it's important to remind viewers about what the African Peer Review Mechanism is. So the Africa Peer Review Mechanism is a voluntary assessment of member states, how they are doing, how they are faring on a set of parameters. How are they doing in good governance? How are they doing as far as decentralization is concerned? And all these other very important issues. However, not all member states are part of it. Right now we have about 39, around 40 member states that have acceded to the Africa Peer Review Mechanism, which means we have about 50 more countries to go. Now, there's not enough time because by 2023, the hashtag being towards universal accession by 2023, almost all member states should have acceded to the Africa Peer Review Mechanism, which means that in the next 1.5 years, we should really have gotten all those 15 countries. So the question then is, what are we going to do as Africans to make sure we put pressure on our member states to do the right thing and sign up to the Africa Peer Review Mechanism? It's an important thing. The Africa Peer Review Mechanism is an important institution. Just last December, they started having discussions around the African Governance Report 2021. What is it that Africans need to see by 2063? Is it a bright future? Is it a negative future? Is it a future where nothing is working? And largely, we are happy to say that the studies show that many young Africans are optimistic about the future of Africa, the future of 2063, where they need to be in 2063, which gives us hope that this conversation on these institutions of the African Union is actually making sense. It's going somewhere. So the Africa Peer Review Mechanism is an important institution. It's coming out with all these important reports, the Africa Governance Report, which I recommend you Google and have a read through. It will give you a sense of how Africans themselves are doing good governance and what they need to do better. But also, most importantly, we need to remind ourselves that if we are to get the Africa we want, these important conversations are important. These are the kind of things that we need to do. So if you've never heard of the APRM, you have heard it now. I hope that you'll go out and take a look, but I also hope you stay with subsequent episodes so that we'll be able to help unpack more of what the Africa Peer Review Mechanism has done, and what it's going to do for you to get the Africa you want and the Africa we all want. Thank you once again for this segment. Hope to give you another exciting one next time when we come back to a very exciting episode. So we'll be right back. So welcome back from the break, and again, here on East Africa. East Africa is one of my favorite regions. There's always a lot of very exciting things happening there. So I'm happy to tell you that you just missed a very important festival. It's called the Cannes Festival, hashtag the Cannes Festival. You can find it on Twitter. They're talking a lot about knowledge, art, and networking in Tanzania, some part of Tanzania. They said northern Tanzania, where they brought together a lot of musicians, activists, and all these people to have a very important conversation on Africa's development agenda. This year's the first lady, so-called first lady of Kenyan hip hop, was there. She's called Nazizi Hij. East Africa also, Reggae Kings were also there, as well as a lot of very interesting East African outfits that are doing very interesting things around Africa's development. So with this Cannes Festival, we believe that it's an important thing to follow, because it looks like with all the things that are happening around the continent, there's some exciting spaces that one needs to be and one needs to follow. And we are very happy to see that Tanzania is the one that is hosting this, even though we are hoping also that Tanzania will work harder at ensuring that the COVID issues are addressed, because we know that the cases are there, but someone is denying that the cases are high and are present. We hope that one they'll be able to sort it out. But let's keep our eye on the ball for this Cannes Festival for next year and subsequent years, because we believe that these are the kind of things that need to happen in different spaces if, again, we are to get the Africa we want. So take a look again once on Twitter, hashtag the Cannes Festival. That's the Cannes, K-A-N Festival. And hope you get some very interesting and fascinating insights about the annual Pan-African Festival, as it is called, in the beautiful country of Tanzania, where if you're in Ghana, you will know that you do not need a visa to travel to Tanzania. So I hope other countries also follow suit and relax the visas, all in the name of the African Continental Free Trade Area, so that you can move freely from one country to the next. So here ends our year in East Africa. We hope to come to you next time with more exciting editions. Thank you. And we're going to get straight into our guest, Juliet Amoah, who will help us understand how the whole elections went with the all-media tracking system that they use for Penplusbytes. Thank you. We'll be right back. Welcome back from the break. My name is K Bensah Jr. I'm happy to be here once again. We're going to be speaking to our special guest who's been here before with us. Juliet Amoah is Executive Director of Penplusbytes, and she's going to remind you what they do, because we're going to have a very important follow-up conversation about what they did during the elections 2 months ago. So, Juliet Amoah, nice to have you once again in the studio.
Thank you, Manu.
Penplusbytes, a very interesting title. Tell us once again, especially for those who were not able to catch it last time, what Penplusbytes does, very briefly. Then we'll just zoom into what you did during the elections and why the role of the institution was very instrumental.
So thank you, Manuel. So Penplusbytes is an organization that is 20 years this year. And we have focused on building the capacity of media persons and journalists. We also have evolved a little bit. And what we're doing in over the last decade or so now is to actually look at governance and perfecting governance models and governance systems. And we're doing that using technology. And so all the new digital tools and digital channels that you can think of, those are what we are using to help governments and development workers get the outcomes that they want to get.
Digital channels at this time, at an age of COVID, sounds very important and very popular. How are you coping, especially given this part of the world digital channels are at least the frequency, at least the fluidity, so to speak. How do you manage?
Yeah, and that's why we focus on both the use of those technologies and also the offline engagement of the users of those tech. So if we went into a rural community, for example, it's well and good to tell them how to use a smartphone. It's well and good to tell them how to use search engines on the internet, but they may not even have the infrastructure. And so there's a place for human-machine collaborations. And so we're always taking it offline, explaining the technology offline by using community-based organizations and focal persons who will be within the community, so that if it is an app, for example, that is tracking in Ghana the school feeding program or any social protection programs that or the delivery of any goods and services, public goods and services, for example.
Yes.
And we wanted to track the quality or the access to that service. We would say to the community that, look, we want to hear your feedback.
Okay.
How do we hear your feedback? We can't come in and out of the community. Here's an app. It might be a mobile app. It might be a platform, a mashed up platform that allows you to text or interact and to tell us what you're seeing within your community. That we then synthesize and send off to the duty bearers. That's very technical, highbrow. And so what we will do with the focal persons or the community-based organization that I talked about is to have them go to the community and then be the ones that are using the platform to get the information to the duty bearers here in Accra at a national or state level. So we're working at the grassroots and using tech as an amplifier so that the problems that they're facing in accessing those public goods are brought to the fore through these websites and tech solutions, and then these are sent on to the duty bearers for decision making. So essentially, we're closing the feedback loop.
Fantastic. Still sticking with tech as an amplifier. I think Penplusbytes has been very consistent for the past couple of years. I think one of the organizations that has been doing very well in tracking using a number of systems, how elections are done in Ghana. I think, when did you exactly start doing that tracking, if you can remind audiences?
So for every election year, every election cycle, we start in June, 6 months to the election.
Okay.
Our elections in Ghana are usually in December. So we start in June. And in June, we're giving, we're amplifying the work that the Commission for Civic Education does in Ghana.
Okay.
We're amplifying the work that the electoral management body, in our case, the Electoral Commission, is doing. And so we're sending out information about how to vote, what are the key messages. We're giving you bite-sized information about what the candidates are saying. And we're tracking all of that and passing it through infographics, through small skits and different little videos, you know, and animations. And we're putting out that information that these duty bearers have. We're amplifying it and feeding it to society.
That's quite some work, though. All very communication-related things, which obviously is very important. But specifically, what exactly do you do on election day? Even though you've gotten 6 months to prepare, but on election day you do it what exactly? Maybe help us understand.
Right. So we had for this election and for the last 4 elections in Ghana. That's 2012. No, 2008. Yeah, 2008, 2012, 16, and 20. So for 4 elections running, what we've decided to do on election day itself. And again, it's not just on election day. Our work can't be just on election day, otherwise we will have set up to fail. So we have what we call an all-media tracking center. And the all-media tracking center is set up for 72 hours, 1 day before the election, on the day of the election itself, and then 1 day after the election. So it's 72 hours during that period. What does the All Media Tracking Center do? We have about 50, 60 volunteers who are sitting behind various monitors, TV, radio, these are the traditional stations, and then also behind a huge monitor which we have built a program on. The program is an aggregator. the aggregator crawls on social media to get some keywords. So if we put in the keywords such as ballot snatching, which is very common in Ghana, or we put in, you know, frozen BVR kits or long queues. These are all keywords that we feed the system.
Okay.
The system then crawls on Twitter, Facebook, and so on, and picks out anyone who is tweeting to complain about these issues.
Oh, okay.
Once they're tweeting and saying, look, I'm standing in this polling station in East Legon area, and for the past 3 hours, we haven't been able to vote, or because there's no indelible ink, or there's no such this and that. People will tweet about it or put comments on Facebook. Our program goes and catches that kind of information and puts it into a processor, which we then see in our office. The guy who's monitoring the platform is then able to take out that, and we have a group of verifiers who are verifying to say, look, here is what our aggregator has brought to our notice. There's lots of people tweeting this. Is it fake news or not? And the only way to cross-check that is both by going online and searching if there are news media carrying that kind of story, or actually calling
Them.
our embeds in the society. So we had journalists that we were working with who would be at those polling stations around the country, and we would call them and ask them, is it true that you haven't been able to vote for 3 hours? Once the verifier gets that information, they put it back on the system to say, this is verified true or verified false. The verified true now gets sent as a report to the Electoral Commission in real time. So we've already, that's why I say our work doesn't start on election day.
Yes,
it always starts a long time before the election. So by this time, we have already spoken to the Electoral Commission, and we have a liaison or a liaison there who we will then give the information to say polling stations X, Y, and Z are, you know, not working because of what this, that, and this, and these are verified issues. You need to resolve them.
Now, we're speaking to Juliet Amoah, Executive Director of Penplusbytes. She's here today to give us part 2 of how it all went during Ghana Decides 2020. There are, and I think there were a number of CSOs and NGOs that were active on that day. But what we know about Penplusbytes is its unique ability with the system that it already has. We're just learning about the aggregator, how it all works, and so on and so forth. And those are very useful things for us. Once again, a reminder of, you know, Africans doing things themselves, African organizations doing things, which is the kind of thing that we like to hear on this show. So back to you once again, Juliet. So this system that you have, is there any way in which you think it's a model that can be replicated for other countries and the elections, maybe in the sub-region, for example?
Definitely, and we've used the same system. We've got a project that we call the African Elections Project, and that project's been running for 15 years now. And what we do when we do get funding, because that's one of the things, is to take the equipment in there. Because I say funding because, yes, we use a lot of volunteers. We use a lot of data. We do have to have a physical space in which to set up, and we can't have offices in all of these spaces. But in the events that we have done, in this case, we did it for Mali in 2012 or something like that. And we've done remotely for Uganda and Malawi elections as well. What we would do is that it's the same thing. We go into the society, we ask them, what are the sorts of things that go wrong or right on an election day? So from there, we get our keywords, because remember that the computer or the robot only works as much as you've given it.
It's, yes, to work.
You know, so it's what you're teaching the robot to go and do that
Yes.
it does.
Yeah.
And so we give as much information. We go into the community and we say, what are the issues around your elections? Is it the policies? Is it the political statements? Maybe the manifesto promises? What are the things that go wrong on an election day? Ballots, equipment, riots, picketing. What is it? Rains, maybe because you're holding elections during the rainy season. We put all of those into the system.
Okay.
And then we replicate what I have just explained, which is that you have to have somebody from the electoral management body who's willing to listen and willing to take on the reports. You have to have a group of verifiers who are verifying what the robots are bringing back from the field.
Okay.
And you have to have journalists or other sorts of volunteers in the field who are feeding you the stories and helping you verify.
Wow.
So it can be replicated.
So that's basically the verification is to ensure that nothing comes out as fake news, I suppose.
That's correct.
Wow. And that's a lot of people. The system is quite comprehensive, I dare say. But that's quite a lot of people to ensure that something that goes out. Are you able to have the verifiers focus their attention on that whilst you also monitoring the elections, because things can get pretty intense on election day, especially when you have your people out on the field, the agents making sure that they're next to the polling stations and so on. How do you reconcile that, the verification with the fast developments happening on the field?
Yeah. So for the fast development, that's what you need the AI for. That's what you need the aggregator for.
Okay.
Because we can't be everywhere at once, and so it's crowdsourcing the information.
Yeah.
So we're crowdsourcing. People are tweeting, people are Facebooking, Snapchatting. All of that is happening. You have one machine that's sitting there getting all that information into a room.
Yeah.
In that room, you have someone looking at the flow of the information and picking out the juicy ones, if you like, and synthesizing that. So that's one or two people. You have maybe 10 verifiers who've got mobile phones and tablets that are then looking at the information. They verify based on news reports. So they are not looking at the social media feed.
Okay.
They are now doing the first verification using media reports. And so if you say that you are in polling station Z and there's been a fire outbreak or guns, we expect that within the 30 or 10 minutes that you're reporting it on Twitter, there will be a news channel that's also reporting it live. And so we go and check for news items.
Okay. Fantastic.
If there are no news items, that's when that group of verifiers who are sitting in the room, they are not in the field.
Yes.
That's when they call journalists or any other volunteers who are in the field. These people are not necessarily people who work with us. These people are people who we have an understanding with, who, as they do their work of monitoring, so they can even be election observer groups that we've spoken to.
Okay.
Like this year, we worked with the EU observer group.
Wow.
This year. So we rely on them, what they are observing in the field, we use as part of the verification process.
So they came to you?
The EU came to us.
Okay, fantastic. So,
the
that's some
EU
important recognition
Yeah,
there.
the EU observer mission came to us to ask us if we could liaise with them to share information. So we had an agreement to share information between our two groups, as did the Foreign and Commonwealth Office observers. That's the UK and allied observers. They also have there. And then also the Ghana Coalition of Domestic Observers, CODIO,
yes.
as well. So we're working with all these 3 observer groups who are already in the field. They've got masses of people and volunteers in the field.
Yeah.
And what we have to do is have our 10 verifiers or so get onto the phones and call them and ask them to verify things as we see them unfold.
When you talk about volunteers, I want to revisit the issue of volunteers at this time, because right now we're in an age where it's quite challenging to find a job. You end up either spending the rest of your time doing many degrees as you're looking for a job or that kind of thing. These volunteers that come to help you, are they given something? Are they paid something? Okay.
Which is why when you ask the question about can this be replicated in other African countries, I said, why not?
Yes.
It is a question of funding. The volunteers are paid because they're there in shifts for 72 hours.
Yes.
So yes, they're paid.
Okay.
They're paid transport, they're paid data, they're given equipment to work with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're housed because they can't go back home for the 3-day period.
Yeah.
They're housed in a hotel so that they can be there because we're running a shift.
Yeah.
We're monitoring the system. You can't sleep.
Yes.
So we're stepping in, even though we have shifts of 10, 15, 20 people per shift, you still need to have people on standby who, if people are tired, they can... So it's a 72-hour non-sleeping period, usually.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So definitely it is something, if you're watching and you know that in the next 4 years, which will be when will that be? 2024?
That's correct.
2024 elections in Ghana. If you know that there's an opportunity, you better start preparing. Is there any background information, background knowledge that they need to have in order to be able to put themselves to this?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Because when you do come, we give you training on what it is we're looking at. And the program is comprehensive.
Okay.
The program uses graph lines to show you linkages between what's going on in terms of this polling station's delay and how that's going to delay the results. It shows you who is saying what. It shows you the concentration of places where what we call hotspots and that sort of thing. So we show you how to read the system. And it's not even everyone who's going to have to read the system, because there are some people who are just monitoring and telling us what's happening on the news and giving us written reports. And there are a different group of people who are looking at the aggregator and pulling out the most important information. And then there's the group of verifiers. We train all of them to look at different aspects of it. We train the journalists and the other observer groups. We have a checklist of what we're looking for, so that they're not on the phone unduly when they're supposed to be. So it's a checklist of BVR kits. Are they there? If not, when did they arrive? So you can I can pick a phone and say BVR kits, and then you can say item 1 or 2. Item 1 being maybe if they haven't arrived. And then item 2 being they're there, but the guys sitting behind them still also haven't arrived. And so if I say item 2, then
they know what to do.
I know what the problem is for that polling station as well.
In an age where we're talking about the Africa we want, we're talking about good governance, peaceful institutions. Do you think that democracy is a good channel through which we're going to improve our development?
Wow, that is a question, a $1 million question. What are we seeing even in the more established democracy? It's something that my team and I have mulled over, we've laughed at, you know, we've kind of, and it's one of those things that you're not sure how to approach it. Yes, there are pros and cons to a democracy. It's like the question of, are exams the best way to assess a student's knowledge.
Yes.
Well, maybe they're not, but until something better comes along, that's what we have. And so in this day and age, until something better comes along, a different model, which is what African leaders themselves have to come up with. And we're sitting in the AU, Association of African Universities office. Maybe that's what the academia and African politicians ought to look at in terms of what are the new models. Is it democracy and communism combined that will work for Africa? Is it socialism, communism, a bit of democracy? You know, what is it? Or is it authoritarianism? And that's mixed up, so that there are things in the constitution that are vetoed and are what they are. They cannot be so irreducible. Some irreducible truths, and we can't do anything. They're constant. What is it? It's something that the leaders have to look at. But
it was clearly a surprise question, just to get you to think and tell us a little bit about why, therefore, technology, the role of technology going forward, especially with the strange times we are in with COVID, has technology, in your view, especially with this kind of sophisticated system that you have set up, has become the big thing that you would recommend that a lot of up-and-coming, let's say, graduates should probably venture into, because of the kind of opportunities it will open up and their linkages for them to get the Africa they want?
Right, I'm not sure if I understand the question completely, and as you said, perhaps you asked it as a trick question, but we're back on track. But in terms of tech in general, I mean, it's important, especially if we're looking at democracy as something that allows and thrives on voices. As we like to say in Penplusbytes, it thrives on voices, it thrives on participation. For anyone to have a free and fair election, for anyone to have a credible election, it means that it has to be broad-based participation without disenfranchising people, and it has to have information flow so that people are making good decisions, which is why everyone is in a tiffy about the fake news, the rise of fake news, the weaponization of information. Those are all threats to democracy. So to that extent, well, then technology does allow us to amplify voices. Technology does allow us to take information and feed it equally to the masses. So it's not just information that just the educated will get. Our system allows us to feed and break down information so that even the least educated people within our societies have the same level of information for decision making. So to that extent, yes, technology is important. It's something that governments must invest in. I think it's been said in different spheres, both for economic development and all that sort of thing. In terms of the university graduates that you're talking about, and is it worthwhile for them to get into tech? Of course it is. Absolutely. That's the new world. That's where it all is. If you look at COVID and what COVID-19 brought to the table, it was in Ghana that we couldn't even congregate, and there were no campaigns and rallies as we know them. But it didn't stop political parties from canvassing for votes. And they did their canvassing online using digital platforms. And so if you're a digital marketing student or a digital political analyst or whatever, that's where you should be going with your studies. That's where you should be going with your skill sets. Because yes, you did say that employment is tricky in today's age, but there's also a lot of employment, and you have to create that value. You have to create that employment for yourself. And so if tech is the new way of campaigning and you're a political student, political science student, you can't just learn the theories of it. You've got to understand how people are congregating online. You've got to understand how people are mobilizing online. And you have to make models that work both online and offline in terms of strategizing to win political party power.
Are there any challenges that you have had along this journey of the All Media Tracking Center, things that you think need to be done better going forward?
It's certainly the infrastructure and just the cost of data.
Yeah.
And because there are places where people tweet, but they can't sustain the tweets, because that's one of the things that we went into the communities and said, look, if you want your voice to be heard beyond just the ballot box, you need to be able to go online and tell us your stories. But data is expensive. And so one tweet per day is probably all that people can afford because they switch off their data. And so the quality of data and the quantum of data that then comes through for us in the back office to analyze is very scanty, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the challenges. The other challenge, as I said, was the infrastructure. There are places which have not been reached with mobile telephony, or the networks are so bad that you're relying on those people. And those are the hotspots. Those are the hard to reach. In Ghana, we call them the overseas communities, because either they're flooded out or the roads are not good, so nobody else goes there. But those are the communities, because there's no police enforcement, the state can't control them. That's where the hotspots, the guns come. That's where the election violence erupts. But those are the same places where they're deplatformed, and we can't hear what they have to say. And so we can't send help to them. So it's a chicken and egg situation.
That's quite unfortunate. I'm just thinking that I recall seeing a study the other day, I think was it from the World Bank, that indicated that there are countries like Kenya have about 70 to 80% of their population that are fully connected almost all the time. And I can testify that when I speak to friends in Kenya and we have a WhatsApp call for about 30 to 40 minutes, for example, my call will drop when I'm standing in the same place, around the same place for about many times over, and theirs will still be on, and they're wondering why has my call dropped.
That's correct.
That can be quite embarrassing.
Yes.
You've been to Kenya a number of times, so I'm taking it to you
I've
about your
lived in
experiences,
Kenya.
And you've lived in Kenya too for a number of years. For 2 years. What, in your view, do you think they are doing right that we need to do right? Is it that they're bringing the quality of data, they have brought the cost down to the extent that everybody can afford it and have improved it? I think Safaricom is one of the more dominant ones and a very good one.
Yeah.
So
I think it boils down to policies and
what are we doing here? Because then I'm asking this, linking it with the work that you do, because we know, for example, that Kenya looks to us, to Ghana very well, and of course we know the role that Kofi Annan played in their election back in 2008. Supposing Kenya came to you and said, "Come and help us, monitor our elections," I mean, it would be a breeze. I mean, you wouldn't definitely not have a problem. But then, can you also go to them and say, "Well, can you bring Safaricom and bring it to Ghana so that we can do what?" Just tell us a little bit about what you think we can do about the data. I know you're not a technical expert on it, but it is so key to what we do. Because even here, sometimes with the programs that we do, we have suffered technical issues. So just tell us a little bit about that experience, that country experience.
So I think that quite broadly, it's to do with the policies. And so what are our telco policies? We've got the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications, we've got the Ministry of Communications. What are the policies that they have, and how are they implementing those policies? That's what we need to look at. Because I think that Kenya with their M-Pesa. They're far advanced. I think that worldwide, this whole mobile money platform that we have for payments it originated in Kenya before it even went to India, where it then caught fire, and it's now, all over for third world countries, especially where there are huge non-banked populations who can use their mobile phones to do banking and financial transactions. It all started in Kenya, and if you look at on the balance, the number of games even or mobile apps that are from Kenya on Google Play Store, on Apple, Play Store. It's
embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. They're miles and miles ahead. So if you look at all of that, I would hazard to say that it comes down to the issue of what's the policy, what they set their minds to do, and how are they living it out. Perhaps they have what we had in 2003, 2004, ICT development for all, which has fallen by the wayside. Maybe they have that kind of policy and they've lived it out, where they know that, look, this is the new world. Tech is big money. Let's, first of all, bring down the costs that people like MTN or Safaricom are bringing into the country. Once we make data affordable, and these people cannot charge certain amounts of money, then we look at how we can educate people and get them digital literacy skills. Then after that, once they have good and stable data, so you come and build the infrastructure. If you have a minimum set of infrastructure, we're not allowing you to operate here. So that's a policy that says that MTN or Safaricom or whoever has to have a certain minimum level of infrastructure. They have to go to hard-to-reach communities just the same as they do for urban communities. So once they have that, then they look at the data. In Ghana, until last year or the year before, if you bought 2 gigs of data for whatever, $10, $15, $20, and you were not able to use it within a specific time, it was
because there was expiry.
Yes, there was an expiry date until last year or the year before in Ghana, where now they call it the rollover. Because otherwise, then you've lost $20 to data that you hadn't used, and so on and so forth. Are you with me?
Yes.
So that's a policy. That's a policy that perhaps exists. I don't know their policies, but perhaps that exists in Kenya, that's allowing the young people good data, good telco infrastructure, a good digital literacy and education platform. They are doing exploits. That's all I can say about that.
So, in fact, as we begin to wrap up, I just want to remind viewers and also listeners that we're having a conversation with Juliet Amoah, Executive Director of Penplusbytes. We've had a very interesting flashback of how the All Media Tracking Center during the elections was used, set up with volunteers, verification systems, and all these kind of things, and how very important it will be for the next election and subsequent elections as well. The irony of it all is that the most important thing that will sustain it, that the challenge that they need to overcome, is data. So even though the conversation was on how it went during the elections and how their system was used, because of the tech conversation around elections, and especially at these very difficult times, it was important to revisit the challenges that they have, which was, we have identified what the biggest one is, data. So we can easily say that the country experience that Juliet has had in Kenya, having lived there and also having seen how Safaricom does very well. If anyone from Safaricom is watching this program, anyone connected is watching, what is it that we need to do very quickly to ensure that it is not just happening in Kenya, that the data is fluid, it's fast, and it's very convenient for all, but for all Africans. Those are the kind of conversations we're having. And I think in subsequent issues and editions, we will be having that conversation, because we are now in a tech world where most of us spend the majority of our time behind screens. And we cannot do this, even for our school kids, if the data is not fast enough. So wanted to tease that issue out for new episodes. So if we really want the Africa we want to get to the Africa we want, these are the kind of things that we need to talk about. But I think Penplusbytes seriously has been doing very well under the very difficult circumstances. We have 5 telcos here, and so it is quite unfortunate that we still are talking challenges of tech. So Safaricom, if you are there, come and help us understand how you did it. But in wrapping up, Juliet, what will therefore be your takeaways? Bearing in mind that we are in a COVID, people say strange times and all these other things, Twilight Zone, blah, blah. But what would be your takeaway for the young people out there, for researchers, for the academia, for the demographic that will be watching this show, and especially in the context now that we have very big thing around the African Continental Free Trade Area, which people say there's a zeitgeist, all these things. What would be your message from your organization about how far you have come in the 20 years and what can be done, how other organizations can come to you to also learn from the great things that you have done?
So, well, thank you, Manuel. I think that for us at Penplusbytes, our main thing is how to improve governance using technology across Africa. And so what we're in the market for at the moment is collaborators. We want to be able to use collaborators and affiliates across the sub-region and, in fact, the greater African region to maximize and improve the work that we're doing in Ghana. We know that it's great work. We know that tech is getting the results that it needs to get. We're interested in doing the same exact things in Mali, in Senegal, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Nigeria, Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, wherever that people have the need for these sorts of tech inputs. But definitely the key takeaway for us is that tech and the social media platforms and the new digital tools that we have currently, they are important, but we all have to use them carefully and wisely so that we do get the Africa that we need. We can't allow fake news or bits and pieces of misinformation to affect the way that we make decisions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that cautionary note. And thank you, viewers, for taking time out of your busy day and schedule to listen to us. And if you missed the first episode where I interviewed Juliet, where she explained a little bit more about how the organization works, you can always go back to the Association of African Universities TV platforms on YouTube and Facebook. YouTube has 10.7 thousand followers, and the Facebook has a lot of followers as well. So you'll do well to check out all the other programs as there, as well as the Agenda 2063, other episodes that help speak to us about getting a sense of what is this whole Agenda 2063? Is it the African dream? What is it exactly? These are the kind of conversations that we like to have on this show. So thank you once again, Juliet, for coming. And we hope to be able to speak to you next time when we have another very exciting episode. Thank you. My name is K Bensah Jr. I'll come your way next time. Have a great day. Goodbye.